Welcome to those of you who have already joined us. And I see more starting to join, so that's good. Hello, Miranda. I saw you briefly on screen.
Takes me a minute to get my screens the way I like them. Okay.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Did you like my music choice earlier, Lori? Disco Snails. You'll have to Google it. It's called Disco Snails. My little 10-month-old granddaughter, she loves it.
Okay.
It has a
Well,
good
I've already made note that if we host another childcare something, we might use that for a breakout session. So, yeah.
My youngest daughter taught it to my oldest daughter, and now she uses it in her first grade classroom when they need a get up and wiggle break. She plays Disco Snails and they dance. So
Okay. So, well, hopefully those of you who are listening to this conversation are finding Disco Snails on YouTube or wherever it can be found. And if you need a wiggle break or something, it's available to you as well. So,
yeah. My little granddaughter is pretty funny when she does it. What the little one does.
I
She
bet.
just puts her little hands up and shakes her head. It's pretty cute.
I forget what I did at a childcare conference a couple years ago, but it was one of those lean left, lean right, stand up, sit down kinds of things. And the adults in the room were just like, what are you doing? So, so welcome to all of you. I see people hopping on and joining us. So thank you for doing that. We've got a few more minutes and we have a great number of registrations for today. So I know more are going to be popping in here any moment. So thanks for waiting on us and waiting with us.
Last month we had 4 people watch through our YouTube live stream, which was interesting because usually I just get 1 or 2. And to have 4 at once, that was kind of a surprise.
Yeah.
So just a reminder, everything is on our YouTube channel and on HomeNE.us, and we live stream this, so that's exciting.
Maybe while we're waiting for a couple more minutes, anybody want to take a guess as to how many registrations we have for today? And Caleb, you can't put a guess because we shared the number with you, but you can open your microphone or put it in the chat box. There are no prizes associated with this guessing game, but we would love to have some interaction with you before we begin today.
I'm sorry, Lori, what I was coming on when you were starting that. What are we supposed to do?
Hey, Paula. So take a guess as to how many registrations we have for today's webinar. And yeah. And there are no prizes, Paula. So unfortunately, I just thought it might be a fun way to get some interaction before we get to rolling here shortly.
Paula guesses 45, Lori.
Okay. Yeah, I see that. Anybody want to take a guess? Thank you, Paula.
Howard doesn't get to guess either because he was in my office earlier today and he knows how many I had.
Okay. Melissa shared the webinar link and she guesses 73. So excited about that number. Who else wants to venture a guess? Either open your microphone or enter it in the chat box.
And I'm going to guess because Melissa shared it with a bunch of Sherman County folks that is why I had 8 new people register this month. We might
Super.
usually have 2 or 3, but 8 in a month is a lot.
Yeah. And considering this is our 84th webinar,
Mm-hmm.
we love to have many of you return as well as new attendees. So,
And we are
okay.
45 people away from having 1,000 people that have participated in a HomeNE webinar over our 8
Okay.
years. That's pretty cool too.
Yeah,
955 is my
definitely.
magic number right now. Oh, maybe 956. 956. I have a hidden
Okay.
line. 956.
Okay. Well, and I have to admit, I have not checked the numbers since this morning, but since we're about a minute away from starting, I'm going to share the registration number I know, which is 99. I think that's one of the highest registration numbers we've had in our history of HomeNE. So,
Since
Caleb,
COVID, we had
yeah,
quite a few in
that's true.
COVID. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe over 100, but
Mm-hmm.
it's been a while. So thanks to all of you for joining in and for registering for today. You're in for a real treat, I will say that. So,
No pressure,
okay,
Caleb.
well,
No pressure.
I see people continuing to join us, but I do want to get started because our practice logistical session with Caleb was wonderful. He's got great information that he wants to share with us. So let's get rolling, shall we? So thank you for joining us today. This is our October of 2025 edition of the HomeNE Learning Network. You probably all know me by now, but for those of you who are new, I'm Lori Ferguson. I'm a community consultant at South Central Economic Development District. We office in Holdridge, and we serve as the lead agent for the HomeNE Learning Network. And if you were listening to our chatter before we started HomeNE in February of 2018. So thank you for being a part of this. It's a statewide learning network that is designed for all people from across the state in hopes that we can help to foster interaction as well as engagement and skill building and to empower and encourage. You know, I was in a meeting yesterday and too often it's not our elected officials that lead. Sometimes they can, and we're very thankful for that. But more often than not, sometimes it comes from a grassroots effort of people who are willing to step up and do what's right for their community. And Caleb will be speaking a little bit more about that today. But our goal is to just bring people together for conversation and for action after the fact. So thanks for being here. Our guest today is Caleb Pollard, Executive Director at the Valley County Economic Development office in Ord, Nebraska. Great things happening there. And Caleb, I'm so glad to have you with us today. I've enjoyed getting to know Caleb. I first kind of interviewed and worked with him back in the spring um, to confirm that he would be our speaker today. So we talked about track and athletics in general. So a lot of good things for him personally as well as professionally. So welcome, Caleb. And I want to just say thank you again for saying yes when I called you a few months ago and asked if you would be a presenter. I know that you have an introduction slide in your presentation that you'll be touching on here soon, but and it does tell us a little bit more about you. So I'm not going to waste any more time. Just let me once again say thank you for being here. And let's start because I don't want to waste a single minute of your presentation time today, okay?
That sounds great. Thank you, Lori. And I hope everyone can hear me okay. By the nodding of heads, looks like we're good. There's a lot of familiar faces on the call today. I want to say hello to some old lost friends we haven't seen in a while. And I do recognize there's a lot of new faces. So if we can go to the next slide here, what we'll do is we're going to talk about how we are practicing proactive redevelopment strategies for both commercial and residential properties that also include our downtown business district here in Ord, Nebraska. And we've put together a pretty healthy toolkit in which to give us different resources to address not just community revitalization, but also address blight and nuisance abatement within our own community for a number of reasons, in which I'll touch on here very shortly. One of the things I want to really highlight, though, is to give you guys practical information on how you can take some of the things you might learn here from today and take it home to your communities and then practice perhaps some of the different activities that we're doing that might help you as a community address things and grow. So first and foremost, the first thing I want to state is when we were putting together our campaign to tackle these things, I shamelessly stole a number of presentation materials from this webinar series to include in my essentially my prospectus to the city council and to my economic development board to move forward with a number of different project activities. We also did a lot of different community outreach, spent some time up in Northeast Nebraska, visiting with communities, including Norfolk, to see how they were structuring deals to accomplish downtown redevelopment specifically. And we'll get into the weeds here in a little bit. Sherry, if you can go to the next slide, please. So who am I? So some of you know who I am. I am the executive director of Valley County Economic Development here in Ord, Nebraska. So we do have a countywide focus, and we do have project activity in all of our Valley County communities. But Ord being the largest community in the county, which is still relatively small, we're only 2,100 people plus, but we are and have been a pretty proactive community for at least 25 years, and have had a sustained economic development campaign under the same organization for that same amount of time. And in 2000, put LB 840 on the books, which really gave us rocket fuel from a resource standpoint to do a number of the things that we're able to do today. I'm also a business owner in downtown Ord, which is going to be important to talk about later, especially if you like beer. And started Scratchtown Brewing Company in 2012 with my business partners. It took us about a 10-month period to get our building up in downtown, and then we started operations in 2013. And prior to that, I was the economic development director, same position I am today, from 2008 to 2013 here in the office, and then had stints at the Omaha Chamber and Nebraska Department of Economic Development. So a few of you probably remember me from the early days when I was running around the state talking about a number of different economic development strategies. But where I really cut my teeth on this was in 2000 when I was working for a program called the Nebraska Community Improvement Program, and was an intern with that program. And I traveled the state quite extensively and got to visit a number of your communities that are probably involved in this call, and got a real solid lesson in how volunteerism can positively impact rural community development, and was inspired by a number of people across the state that are still active in community and economic development efforts. And one of the things I'll impart to you today is a lot of the strategies that we're executing are things that we've been talking about for 20 years. So these are things that are a long-term focus and a long-term campaign that sometimes just needs the right leadership in the room to make happen. And so we'll talk about the importance of leadership and political capital as we proceed forward with our presentation. So we can go to the next slide. So today what we're going to cover is we're going to cover how we've tackled blight and substandard neighborhoods and community issues. We're going to talk about the tools in which we employ to do that, and then also the importance of the political side of things, because you do need good political leadership to help you accomplish your goals. And I'm going to impart some of the lessons I've learned and the experiences I've had, both as a private business owner and as an advocate in economic development, whether I was serving on our loan committee or whether I was actually in this office doing the work. And so what we're going to do is just get into the weeds about how to do this stuff and talk about, how can you use leverage in LB 840 or micro TIF to accomplish the goals that you may want to accomplish. So we've put together a pretty sophisticated toolkit, I think, for a community of 2,100 with a lot of resources. And one of the challenges that we're running into right now is that we've been so successful over the course of the last 2 years that we're running out of resources. And so we really have to become, I think, more creative in how we engage funding support to continue to tackle these issues. We can go to the next slide. So for some of you, this might be old news or old information, but I think it's really important to remind some of the newer economic development professionals or community development professionals is that over 40 years ago, there was a concept that was proposed that essentially said that minor signs of disorder and as it increases into major issues of blight, create social constructs and issues within the community that oftentimes end up in massive community decline. And then what you see is then an increase in antisocial behavior or an increase in policing activity to address those issues. And I'm pretty sure that every single one of you that is interested in this issue can understand what happens to a community when sustained declination happens. And it really gets down to the issue of community pride, which you'll hear me talk about a lot today. We justify all of our actions with data. Data is really important, but the emotional heartstrings are, to me, most important. And as almost a near lifelong resident of rural Nebraska, for me, it's also an issue of not just community pride, but then what do you do about it? Complaints are one thing, but complaints without action is just hot air, in my opinion. And so what we need to do is not just find champions within our community to address the broken window theory, but also empower each other to work together and address this issue. And so this is, I think, is a pretty good corollary with some new work that NPPD is doing with Hastings College, which we can go to the next slide here real quick. Based on the work of Jeff Sigler out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He's actually from, I believe, a township outside of Pittsburgh, but he has a tremendous book I encourage you all to read called Your City is Sick. I think there will be a lot of instructive information there for economic development professionals to think deeply about. I know, and Rick Nelson can vouch for this, I ask a lot of deep questions about what is the whole purpose of economic development in the first place. And my theory has always been that economic development, first and foremost, should be the focus on the improvement of the human condition. And one of the important things that we do in economic development is provide the space for the improvement of that condition, whether it be through the built environment or the social networks in which we operate. And this slide here from Jeff on his Revitalize or Die Facebook page really cuts to the quick. Is really your posture within your community dictates the outcome in which you're going to get. And so if you don't put together a comprehensive strategy to address blight and decay, you're going to be missing out on opportunity, I think, to do the best job that you can. And so we are not a perfect community. I want to make that abundantly clear. We have warts just like everybody else, and we do have a desire for continuous improvement. And so we're going to get into the weeds here right now and talk about that. So what we have here, I'm going to show you what I like to call a handful of community turds that we've been active in mitigating over the course of the last 5 years, but 2 years really ramping up with our efforts. And what you see here are a number of different abandoned or dilapidated properties in both residential neighborhoods, or in the picture in the middle is a redevelopment project that we engaged in 2023. That had a unique creative strategy that we had put together when I was still working for the university before I came back to economic development here as executive director. And that was how do we address blight within our downtown business district, and how do we address it within our residential neighborhoods? And so we can go to the next slide. So here's more of what I like to call the wonderful assets of Ord, Nebraska that have since been mitigated. On the left there in the big picture is an old dilapidated building that used to be called the Attic that collapsed in the early 2000s, and the city had to clean up the property, and then they assessed the investment company that was located out of California with that demolition assessment. Where that stands right there, you can see that is the same corner as that first picture you saw me pointing up at of where the new brewery is, which is now not new, nearly 15 years old. But these things can work, and they can bring in tremendous different community assets that bring both value and pride to the community. On the right, you see we have a number of abandoned trailer homes that are sitting on vacant properties that oftentimes, I'm sure you guys have heard this, you have someone that passes, there's no next of kin, and then you have a whole lot of issues that come up when it's required to acquire these properties and clean them up. Of course, you see with the beautiful tractor trailer there and the school bus that are both expired licenses and are sitting on an empty vacant lot. Oftentimes people just dump their junk and then they don't want it anymore and they walk, and then you're left with what to do about cleanup, which we're mitigating that issue in the top right corner as we speak this week. Go to the next slide. So I wanted to assure you guys that Ord is not perfect and we have a lot of work to do, but we've made tremendous progress. And so when I came back to the office, we had 6 properties under redevelopment contracts. We have 31 today. And what we've been able to do is leverage a number of different resources. So we have LB 840, which is the municipal option for sales tax that we use very aggressively for small business finance. We're going to break a record this year in small business loans that we've made in a calendar year. And last year we broke a record in terms of total dollar volume made to small business development projects in ORD. Through that program, we were also able to create 2 different rebate programs. One of them is for downtown improvements where we match dollar for dollar up to $10,000. And then we looked at our housing shortage issue from a workforce housing standpoint. And what we did is we created a infill housing redevelopment program that pledged $25,000 of rebate dollars towards residential housing redevelopment. And the way that that program works and how it's structured is that we rely on the private sector to acquire these properties, and then they're tasked with cleaning them up, flipping them, or renting them out to workforce housing. And we have 18 houses under contract over the course of about 13 months of work. And we're expecting at least 50 new bedrooms to come online through that work over the course of the next 6 months. So when you talk about how do you address rural workforce housing issues, new build is really important. We also know from our work with our rural workforce housing dollars, which you see right below micro TIF, is that sometimes isn't price competitive with where some of our workforce is, especially our working class blue collar workers, and we need to have other options. And so what this housing infill project has been able to do is to give us, I don't want to use the word price controls, but at least effective pricing strategies when these properties sell or they go out to rent that hit that sweet spot of worker attraction for us that's going to be within that $100,000 to $200,000 range, as opposed to above 200 or above 300,000. We're seeing a lot of new builds going for usually above 300,000, just depending on the project. We were able to adopt micro TIF over the course of the last year as well. I believe we're the smallest community in the state now that has micro TIF on the books for our first redevelopment zone, which would include our downtown business district. And we knew that we needed additional resources beyond LB 840 and our rebate program to help finance some of these repairs. And so I shamelessly stole not just Gary Pearson's TIF presentation, a micro TIF presentation from last year, but also talk to a number of people across the state, including Norfolk and Beatrice, to say, how did you guys implement this and what do you think so far? We're reserving it more for our downtown business district right now, but we will be able to do more with that as we get a few more projects under our belt. We were recipients of the Nebraska Rural Workforce Housing Funds, and part of those funds went to build new duplexes in our newest housing development that we did back in 2010. But then we also used some of those funds to then partner with our community development authority with the city of Ord to acquire some of those infill lots that we've been buying, cleaning up, and then flipping and doing infill housing as we continue with our campaign. A big one that we can talk about today is nuisance abatement, and we have not added any ordinance to the books on nuisance abatement. We just decided to enforce the laws that were already there. And I know that might be a novel concept for some communities, but you do have the authority to hold people accountable in your community for contributing to decline and blight. And we can talk about how we've done that. And then the last piece is what I say, and which I love to do most, as you guys probably know by now, is a lot of talking and talking and talking. Building that political capital and building the campaign to say, look, enough's enough. For me, I said this before, it's an issue of community pride. I don't want to live in a dying community. I want to live in a bright, vibrant community that is attractive, not just to new people that want to move here, a new business that wants to move here, but I think this is more important, and I'll hit on this at the end of the presentation. If you can't convince your own residents that our community or your community is worth investing in, you've lost. And if you do these things, I'm a big believer that these are demonstrative efforts that you can do to show people that you can change the condition of the broken environment that a lot of our communities reside in and change the trajectory and build what I call gravitational pull and inertia to get people excited. And that effect is really catching. What happens and what we've seen is the neighbor cleans up their property, or the downtown business owner gets a rebate and they put a lot into their storefront, or they put a new roof on, or they put a new HVAC system in. And why are those two things important? Because if you don't have climate control, you don't have airtight and watertight roofs, you've lost almost every ability to mitigate problems, especially in your downtown business district. And that's why we allow those types of activities to happen with our rebates. Some people say, well, you can't see that downtown rebate improvement if it's not a facade. And I said, facades don't matter if your roof is collapsing. And so we do a lot of talking, a lot of politicking, and leaning on our constituents and taxpayers to help us make these things happen, because at the end of the day, many hands make quick work. And if you have your community pulling with you, you can literally transform your community from the inside out. We'll go to the next slide. So if you guys want to write the website address down, you can look at our platform of incentives. We've put together a tremendous amount of different incentives with LB 840 or other grant programs that we've been able to draw funds from. We also have a partner revolving loan fund with the Loop Valley Rural Public Power District that we can tap into if we're short of funds on LB 840 to make qualified small business loans. Those business loans are required to have a primary lender involved. So our commercial lenders are oftentimes the ones that bring us leads. And what we do is we work with our commercial partners with LB 840, because oftentimes that's the rocket fuel that helps with the entire investment. And so what I can say with absolute confidence is that we were able to close a deal on a near $1 million investment project in our downtown business community this morning with the use of LB 840 as a part of the lending platform, along with other development incentives to get the old City Hall, the old Masonic Lodge acquired and set for redevelopment with a developer that has a relationship with Ord, and that we were able to bring up from Kearney to help us accomplish some of our goals. We have the improvement rebate that we talked about. We have the infill housing fund rebate program. We have a workforce recruitment grant that we're seeing some really positive preliminary data come from. So if you have interest in understanding how we're using our workforce recruitment grant to help our employers use different methodologies to recruit workforce to the community, we can talk about that, because that goes hand in hand with housing and also with childcare. Next slide, please. We use investment clubs in town to do projects. We have micro TIF, tax increment financing, that revolving loan fund, and then you probably won't see a county that gets more micro enterprise tax credit draws than we do up here, because we have an accounting community up here that understands how to utilize micro enterprise tax credits through the state of Nebraska to help inject cash into our business community when we have startups. We'll go next slide. Yes, we'll get to investment clubs at the end here. You bet. Absolutely. And I'm a member of one, so I can talk about that specifically. So the last point on the last slide was lots of talking, right? With all the words on it. And so one of the things that we did a year ago to really kind of kick off this downtown redevelopment campaign, which is kind of central to that of our community redevelopment efforts, and then also through our property acquisition and our housing efforts, is we hosted a downtown walking tour. And I was telling Lori and Sherry that we thought maybe we get 15 to 20 looky-loos that wanted just to see what was going on in downtown, because we have active redevelopment projects going on right now. We have also what we call the good, the bad, and the ugly. We have good spaces that are ready for redevelopment, like you see on the big left-hand side there. We have some tremendous projects that have been completed, like you see up in the top right-hand corner, which is where we had our reception, and I made a call to action to the community. And then there in the bottom right, we have another space that's prime for second story redevelopment as well. But the point that I'm making is on the call to action, and I think this is really important, is that we wanted to show people where we're at and where we want to go with our downtown business community. Because quite frankly, City Council, myself and my board are tired of letting cans get kicked down the road like they have been the last 40 years on blight mitigation, just plain and simple. We're fed up. We're fed up. We're fed up with the attitudes that come with it, and we're fed up of watching our community just stand by and act as if it was helpless and not do something about it. So what we thought would be 15 and 20 people was actually nearly 60 people that showed up. And we did downtown walking tours of the good, the bad, and the ugly, and then we did the call to action up in the top right-hand corner. And what I did there is I said, look, we're going to have to do some things differently. We're going to have to do some things creatively. We're going to have to take some risks. If you want to do this, do you want to do this? And the response was resoundingly yes. And so what I said was that if that's the case, I'm going to need your help with political leverage. I have a great city council. The mayor and the city council president's on my board of directors, and that gives me a unique opportunity to work with the city of Ward and our CDA to accomplish things that we have only dreamt that were possible in the past, and be able to do some things that we've never done before. And so we have three air quotes new things we've done this year that we've never done before in the 25 history of our organization. And it's given us a really creative roadmap to move forward to do these things. But I couldn't do that without the leverage that comes from community participation. And I think if you are transparent and communicative with your taxpayers, even in disagreement, and show a willingness to listen, they will help you get to the finish line. And as I imparted to Lori and Sherry, unfortunately, when I moved here, I made a couple fan club members, and one of those adversaries is now on my board of directors, and we buried a hatchet and we're working together to accomplish some of these things that are really imperative to the future of our community. And so we've been able to put forward not just resources, but I think a posture that says, look, we want to make this better. And what we've been able to see in 5 years since COVID, 38 redevelopment projects in downtown Ord alone, of which 25 plus have happened in the last 3 years. Over $3 million of investment in our downtown business community alone after today's loan approval. We'll go to the next slide, please. So one of the things you have to do is you have to dream. If you can't use artistic license to paint a picture for people and give them something to aspire to, then oftentimes you're reaching for straws in terms of what it is you want to accomplish. So we worked with Nebraska Community Foundation, got a people attraction grant with them, and we commissioned Good Life Architecture and Dave Rippey out of Hastings, and a lot of you know him, put together a kind of a dreamscape for us of what our downtown business community could look like, and also a financial pro forma that would give us at least the lanes in which we would at least expect to have to work through on cost to mitigate some of these downtown problems. And that's what they did. They went to work for us and they put together kind of a dream sequence for us. We'll go to the next slide. We rolled these things out as we did this downtown tour to show people this is what downtown could look like if we got creative and worked together. And I will tell you that this inspired people in a big way in Ord, Nebraska. Go to the next slide, please. So these are all concepts, but as you can see, that's our courthouse square as you're looking to the east from this building here. This building will be actually right directly next to the brewery. And what we wanted to do is to show people that, if you want more people in downtown, perhaps we should have more people living downtown as a part of that. And if you have more people living downtown, you might provide our main floor retailers an additional source of income that can buoy them through difficult financial times, which right now, quite frankly, for small businesses is a very difficult time for a lot of different reasons. The last 5 years from an inflationary standpoint and from a financial capital standpoint has been really difficult for small businesses to operate. And so adding additional revenue streams and helping to reduce the overhead of making those improvements in the downtown business district to generate that additional revenue can be quite tremendous for our business community. And it also adds vitality and, more importantly, jacks up that pride factor when it comes to our downtown business community. We'll go to the next slide. So we got to work. And so what you see here are the results of a number of different projects that we've been involved in. On the left there, Hunter and I from the Nebraska Chamber are pointing at the deal that we were able to wrap up today. I was telling him that we had a big meeting coming up and that this is the north end of a pretty big footprint of a building. We'll see 5 apartments in there. We'll see 3 commercial bays, 2 offices, and then you have 1 commercial space right there that's already ready for rent. We've got 3 letters of intent for the commercial spaces and inquiries already into the not even started apartments that are on the 2nd story. A unique project that we have, which we'll see a ribbon cutting. We'll see the storefront and a ribbon cutting in the middle there. That was a business coach client when I was working for the university as a business coach before I came back to economic development, that was retiring and wanted to turn his downtown business into a storage unit, which is right smack dab in the middle of the square, and there were holes in the roof, and so it was leaking. And I was like, and I had a great relationship with Dan, and I said, Dan, we'll just sell this building, sell it to the CDA, they'll buy it, and we'll get this flipped, and we'll get another business in here. And he said, okay, I'll do that. And he sold it to us. So sometimes when people ask me, well, how do you get these deals drawn up? Well, having 18 years in the community and serving, thousands of pints over our counter, I've got a unique opportunity to talk to people and build rapport and relationships with them. And just frankly, just pick up the phone and say, hey, would you ever be interested in selling? I've got a lot of no's. I've got a couple people mad at me that even asked. I've got a whole lot of yeses. And those yeses lead to exciting opportunities like this, where you're able to mitigate an issue of blight smack dab in the middle of our square, use creative financing mechanisms in which to tackle that blight, put a new roof on it. We were out about $60,000 on this project. And then what we did is we sold it on a best bid basis through the CDA and then saw about $200,000 invested back into it with 4 new businesses. And we'll show that here in a little bit. We took a couple of arrows because this was the first project we had done something like that. It was the first time we'd ever done anything like that with the CDA, where we put something out like that on a creative bid basis and then gave the property away with a new roof on it. And there are a few people that naysay that type of project that now have nothing but good things to say about it now that it's complete and we have 4 new businesses in there. And what we'll get to here in a little bit is a lot of this work, it can be a little controversial to a lot controversial when you get started, but then that silent middle in the community that's always continually watching what you're doing starts to speak up, and then they start to take pride. And if you guys go to our Ord, Nebraska page on Facebook and you look at a lot of these different posts that we put up, the amount of positive responses overwhelms the negative responses. I hardly read the comments anyways, but it's nice to see that we have a lot of people really prideful and happy about the work that we're doing. On the right-hand side there, it's a salon and a longtime downtown business owner that did a complete remodel of their downtown business. And they also used a downtown rebate, which we matched dollar for dollar up to $10,000. So they can take their 20 and turn it, or excuse me, their 10,000 and turn it into 20 if they need. We'll go to the next slide. This is a picture of our new housing development that we use rural workforce housing funds. This floor plan was used for, I didn't have a picture of it in our infill area, but we went to an infill neighborhood we created a nonprofit called Valley County Economic Development Incorporated. And what we use that for is essentially a holding company for these property redevelopment efforts. So the city instructed us where we can't do CDA work outside of our redevelopment zones. We have 5 redevelopment zones in Ord. We need a partner to go out and do this actual work itself. And so we created a nonprofit in 2024 that we then seeded with money from sales tax in 2025 to go out and start acquiring properties and removing the blight. Because if the private sector would do it, the private sector would have done it. And oftentimes, because of where dump fees are, asbestos mitigation, and other issues, there is not a ability to cash flow these types of property redevelopment efforts on the private side like there used to be. That isn't obviously true across the board, but it doesn't happen at the velocity that we wanted to see within our community to address these issues. And so what we did is we took one of the footprints and one of the designated earmarks from our rural workforce housing dollars that we got from DED and put that towards an infill project that the nonprofit had used to acquire the property, tear it down, flip it, and then connect up. And so people will ask us, oftentimes on these projects, do you make money? And I will tell you that on almost every one of these projects, we don't make any money or we lose money. And the whole premise is that we're using sales tax or allocated funds aligned with sales tax to acquire these properties, clean them up, because what we're looking at is that 30-year return on property tax basis. Once we get these properties cleaned up, we get them stabilized in these neighborhoods, and then we incentivize with development agreements to build new on those properties with infill housing. One of the ones that I'm most proud of, we'll go to the next slide. One of the ones I'm most proud of is, it's not on this slide, I apologize, but is one where we're actively working to acquire and have now acquired a half city block in our 3rd ward, which is probably our lowest income ward in the city. And we acquired a half city block, and our goal there right now is we're removing the abandoned trailer homes that are there. There's about 4. And then all that junk that you saw with the school bus and the tractor trailer, and there's scrap iron everywhere. I mean, it's a major mess. Is that what we're doing is we're removing that, and we will have up to 5 spots for what we probably plan on doing, working with rural workforce housing dollars on the reuse side, is doing slab on grade prefab housing there. And we're going to Hastings next week to look at Mr. Rippey's big project he has going down there on the 21st, as we want to learn more about those relationships and understand how we might build more strategic relationships with other partners around the state to accomplish that. But we don't get to a half city block without hitting singles and doubles first with small little opportunities like this. So on the left there, you see back to downtown, That is the storefront now of that CDA building where we had acquired it, put a new roof on it, flipped it on a development agreement, have a number of new businesses there. If you see up top there on the top right-hand side, that is a his and hers boutique. It is a coffee shop, a clothing boutique, and then there's a gun store on the back side of that. And that was one of our first downtown redevelopment projects we had initiated post-COVID that utilized a number of our rebates, but then also LB 840 to acquire financing to fix that up. And that had been under the possession of an adverse property owner. I call them adverse property owners that had it shuttered and it had been sitting empty for about 3 years. And so we were able to get life back into that building, and the amount of retail draw that we have from those three combined businesses has been pretty tremendous. Down on the bottom hand side, that is a 2-bedroom home, single bath home that received a housing rebate. They put about, I'd say 60,000 into that house there, along with our 25,000, and that was used to secure a relocation of a young family that just got married the beginning of this month and is planning a family in our community. And he works in the trades. He's a carpenter. So when you do these things, what you start to see is the ripple effects of multiple different impacts within your community. You're addressing your housing shortage, you're addressing blight, and you're also recruiting workforce to town. And one of the things I had said to Sherry and to Lori was, prior to the call, is that 100% of these new rebate houses that are going back on the market are either getting flipped or rented within days to hours to weeks of them going back on the market. And oftentimes we're seeing workforce that's moving to town that's been waiting to move to town anywhere from 6 weeks to 6 months. And they're working at they're providers at the hospital, for example. And so those are big wins for us. We'll go to next slide. That's the ribbon cutting in front of that building there. That was an exciting day for us because, again, it was one of our first redevelopment projects we had tried something different on. And one of the things I'll talk about is that, many hands make quick work, like I said earlier, but you have to engage a wide swath of your community and community partners to help make these happen and celebrate. So we brought our chamber into this, and we really, really celebrated this event and had a great time sharing the success of another downtown redevelopment project. We'll go back to the housing redevelopment side of things. This is the active work of our nonprofit in partnership with the city of Ward. Unfortunately, this was a meth house. I'm going to just be quite frank with you. So when I go back to that broken windows theory, when I talk about the importance of this work, you're not only mitigating blight and addressing neighborhood decline and then instilling that pride back within the neighborhood, but you're also mitigating antisocial behavior and crime. And so obviously this individual doesn't live here anymore. And obviously what we're finding out through a lot of our work with this abandoned property mitigation, is that we're finding squatters or unhoused individuals in our community that we didn't even know about. And it's not like we want them out of the community. That's not it. But a lot of times these individuals are living in dangerous situations without services that are completely unacceptable for first world America to let their citizens live in. These are our neighbors and they need to be taken care of. And so when we mitigate these issues and create a standard, what we're able to do is address all the financial aspects of the importance of property redevelopment, but we're also addressing that broken window reality, is that we're saying enough is enough. We don't want this in our community anymore. We want kids to feel safe roaming our community. We have a huge feral pack of kids and a tremendous upswing in our school age population, and we want safe streets and we want safe neighborhoods for these kids to be able to be a kid like I grew up where I grew up. And that was, you jumped on a bike and you went for a bike ride from dusk till dawn, and you had the best of what is the best part of living in a small town, is having that feral kid experience. I think it's tremendous when we walk around downtown or walk around our neighborhood with our dogs and the amount of kids on scooters or bicycles enjoying being outside together. That is an absolute, I think, showcase of a vibrant community that is full and growing when you have that laughter of children in neighborhoods, and it's all over here, and I'm proud of that. We'll go to the next slide. The other thing is this, and I think this is really important, is that once you start kicking off successes and celebrating those successes, that you also need to start working with your community partners for programming. So we work through the Chamber of Commerce, we work through our tourism partners, which Valley County Economic Development serves as the umbrella organization to economic development, the chamber, tourism, and then also we have a nonprofit we work with, as I had mentioned. And we work with other community partners like Valley Rods Unlimited, which is our local car club, and we work with others with, for example, Valley County Community Foundation Fund, or Township Library. There's a number of different nonprofits that have started up in town to do fundraising campaigns for things like accessible playgrounds for those that have mobility or mental disability issues. And so what we find is that when you engage your partners and you start working on not just the actual nuts and bolts and the tools to fix things, but then the programming to get them in those spaces to appreciate what we have, you start to turn the tide. And so recently, and I saw Melissa Douche on the call, she knows that we've been talking about this. We recently pulled data by subscription from a platform called Placer AI that gives us foot traffic data and consumer activity data within Valley County, the city of Ord. And what we've been able to see over the course of the last 3 years in our downtown business district alone, through a targeted investment strategy on cleaning things up and providing our business owners financial solutions to help tackle the problems for us, and then also focus on the programming side, we've seen a 120% increase, actually 118% increase in foot traffic in downtown Ord over the last 3 years alone. And I will guarantee you, if you told your business community that if you do these things and you work together with community partners and you can increase your downtown foot traffic by 120%, they're probably going to go say, let's get her done. So that part is important, is the programming piece. And I can't leave that out because that requires that talking and that engagement and that political campaigning within your community. Go to next slide real quick. So this is our downtown as we see it today. This is looking to the northwest in downtown Ord, Nebraska. One of the things I was telling Lori and Sherry before we got on the call, I don't have any available commercial properties in downtown outside of one that is in current nuisance abatement mode right now. And we can talk about nuisance abatement here in a couple slides. Everything else is occupied. I have no empty buildings in downtown Ord besides that. And then we have very limited commercial spaces anywhere else within the community. And I mean, very limited. I think our vacancy rate's under 10%. So that presents its own challenges, is now we're having conversations on speculative property development. We have that downtown project that we just were able to button up this morning. That's going to add, 5 to 6 commercial spaces for us, but that's still not enough bandwidth for us to meet what is also on the other side, this tremendous growth in our small business segment within the community. And we're seeing that happen rapidly. And not everybody wants to build, not everybody can build, and they want build to suit, or they want a turnkey operation. We have very limited resources right now when it comes to that built space. And so that's really important. That's a really important challenge we have to figure out right now. We'll go to the next slide. So I'm gonna wrap this up because I really want to provide you guys opportunity to ask me questions. We'll get into nuisance abatement now. My takeaways is that, and this has been said in economic development and rural economic development for a long time, no one's coming to save you. No one's going to come save you. You have to save yourself, and you aren't going to be able to leverage partnerships or use resources with other outside funders if you don't take action first. And certainly, as I've said earlier, these are things that community fathers and community mothers started 25, 30 years ago. And when I came to town 18 years ago, I was given a tremendous opportunity to work with them and learn from them. And then now, as I'm now one of the older people in the room in almost every board meeting I go to, which is pretty cool, I'm now able to pass that mentorship down and essentially pay it forward to our young community leadership that is stepping up. We have a record number of chamber board members. I would say on our chamber board, the average age of that board member is 28 to 29. And I'm 45, and I used to be 28 when I moved here. So the good news is young people will show up if they are invited. And there is a misconception there often. No disrespect to the older generations, including myself, but oftentimes young people will step up when invited and are inspired by others to take action. I said this earlier, community revitalization is extremely popular. not necessarily at first, after some initial wins and triumphs. So I encourage people to start small, building that inertia by doing one house or one downtown property can build into half city blocks and $1 million investment projects into huge footprints of downtown businesses. This is something that I always felt was really important when I was working at 20 with the Nebraska Community Improvement Program. It's something that I believe now at 45 as a business owner in downtown Ord. And it's also something that Jeff Sigler really hit home for me in his book, Your City is Sick, is we oftentimes in economic development or tourism or chamber work get really enamored with new people coming to town, new people coming to town, new people coming to town. We want tourists. And I want tourists, don't get me wrong. I want tourists for my community. I want it for my business. But if we don't build community that people here can appreciate, love, respect, and actually give a damn about, then it makes our job far harder recruiting businesses and people to town. When you have people in your community as an ad hoc sales force and economic development and chamber work doing the sales for you, I don't have to go out and sound like some sunshine pumper that, is naive about the reality of the world. They're doing the hard selling for us. And they do that in places like restaurants. They do that in my tap room. They do that on the square. They do that at our hotels. We're giving them something to be prideful about. And the last thing I have to say, and I can tell you this with certainty because my hometown has chosen a different path in Ord, Nebraska. I'm from Southeast Nebraska originally. I grew up on a farm 5 miles from this town. I'm not going to name it. Some of you know where I'm from originally. That town decided about 30 years ago that it was time to roll over and die. Lost their school and they're effectively dead. They probably don't like hearing me say that, but when you have one operating business in the entire downtown business district, that's dead to me when you compare it to where I was when I lived there about 30 years ago. What do you have to lose? You have everything, in my opinion. And that's what this really boils down to, is that if we don't take action in some small way, whether that starts in your own backyard, literally sometimes, or in a wider breadth, we have the real opportunity to lose our community and lose faith from our constituents and our taxpayers in our ability to actually solve problems within the communities we reside. And I really, really, really can't emphasize this enough, that you need champions and you need community partners to get this thing rolling. So we'll go to the next slide. So that brings me back to the first slide, which is also my last slide, because I want to hammer this point home. And some of you may have been at this NEDA conference after I had left economic development in 2013. I left economic development not because I didn't like economic development, but because I was really excited to go start my business with my business partners and do something what I felt was called positive transformation through fermentation. We wanted to be a catalyst of positive growth in downtown Ord. And I was tired of talking about it. It was time to do something about it. And a lot of really cool universe, God, all these different things intervened in my life to introduce me to some pretty incredible people that became my business partners. And they all had the same mission in their heart, as they wanted to do the same thing. Obviously, we wanted to make money, we wanted to make beer, and we wanted to have fun. And those three things are kind of the holy trinity of what we do at Scratchtown. But at the end of the day, if somebody doesn't roll their sleeves up and do something about it, who else will? And I encouraged at that NEDA conference, somebody to ask a joke. We had a big group around. I was serving beer there because they'd invited me to host a beer tent. I said, Caleb, now that you're on the other side of the conversation, what would you recommend for us to do? And I said, cash out your 401ks and go invest in your community in whatever way you think is best. And they all laughed and they said, no, seriously. And I said, I am serious. That's what I just did. So it may not be the most sound retirement strategy, but at 32, I thought it was at least a wise use of the small nest egg I had established. My wife, thank God, believed in me and thought it was a good idea as well. And I will tell you, 13 years later, and as you can see, things have gotten a little wider here. 13 years later, we've been able to accomplish the thing that we wanted to do. And I think what makes me effective in my leadership capabilities today, that I was not effective in the same way when I was here the first time, is that we went to work in the trenches to actually do exactly what we talked about and show people that you can be different, you can do different, you can inspire people to step up. And especially that younger generation, I talked about this earlier, they're paying attention. My youngest son is in college now, and my son's friends are moving back to town, my oldest son's friends especially. And it's really interesting that when you get to talking to them, they've been paying attention for a long time. and they've been paying attention to the adults that give a damn in their community, and they've been paying attention to adults that don't. And I wager to guess the ones they gravitate towards those more than others. And that's the point that I'm trying to hammer home here is that if you do these things, you are inspiring others to do more. And what we've seen with the catching behavior and property redevelopment is there's financial incentive out there. People get to work, they roll their sleeves up, and then there is that small town pressure that comes with, well, they're doing it, I need to do it. And that's how we went from a downtown business district that looked shelled out and in need of a lot of work over the last 25 years to no vacancy and completely full. And now we're looking at how we fill up that second story with more apartment complexes and living arrangements for those who want to live downtown in Little Ord, America. So let's go to questions. Go back to the takeaways. These are things that I really believe in. I've been and Rick Nelson knows me well. I've been preaching this stuff for a long, long, long time. We have to step up and we have to act. And if we don't, you might lose it all.
Okay. Thanks, Caleb. We'll turn it over to questions now. There was an early question about investment clubs. Do you mind addressing that as others start to put questions in the chat box? That would be a great one to
Absolutely.
start with.
So we have two investment clubs here in town. One I would say is the older group of guys in town that started a long time ago, and then there's a younger group of guys and gals that got involved about 10 years ago, in which I was a part of. Again, if you don't put your money where your mouth is, and it doesn't have to be a lot of money, but if you don't put your money where your mouth is, then I think oftentimes we're missing out on an opportunity to engage our community. So it's a private investment club. They're LLCs. And then there are pledges of dollars. So there might be a buy-in of $5,000, it might be a buy-in of $10,000, might be a buy-in of $1,000. And then there are annual dues fees in which we are able to then build a nest egg. And then what we did is both groups went out and started acquiring real estate, both passive and active income producing activities to start generating additional revenue for us. So the investment club I'm a part of, we own 3 different passive income producing assets. And we're starting to build a nest egg where I'm making the argument on the speculative commercial development side now to say, hey, we need to get more involved in commercial retail space. We've got some partnerships that we could work with. I have to be very careful with my private business dealings of being above board and avoiding conflicts of interest. And so we do have strict conflict of interest standards that are set within our economic development program that give us guardrails against any sort of allegations of bad behavior. But we're able to work in partnership with our community partners, especially at the City of Ord, to use those investment clubs to acquire downtown buildings or to acquire industrial spots or to acquire commercial spots and then do speculative development. And that's what both investment groups have done over the years. So the older investment group actually was involved in a spec building development project when I first moved here in 2008. It was a 10,000 square foot building that now houses a logistics company, trucking and logistics company. They were able to get essentially a low interest loan from the City of Ord to build it. And then the City of Ord agreed to wait on loan repayment until after the building sold so that the investment club didn't have to carry essentially a vacancy and then not have any revenue to pay back that loan. From a speculative standpoint, it was designated as a community objective. They've also been involved in downtown redevelopment efforts. And then our investment club is now looking at that commercial speculative development.
Okay, great. Thank you. Rick, from earlier said thanks for the kudos and the shout out. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing in the area and how what's happening in Ord might be benefiting the smaller communities.
Are we talking about like the other villages within Valley County?
Like North Loop, Arcadia. Yeah, some of those different ones.
Great question.
What's happening in those areas?
Great question. So we have a lot going on in all our communities. One of the fun things about our LB 840 program is that we collect that city sales tax in the city limits of Ord, but our economic development plan allows us to loan money to all of Valley County. So we've made qualified loans this year alone in all but one Valley County community and rural Valley County for an agribusiness growth project. So we're actively doing small business finance in North Loop, Arcadia, rural Valley County, along with the City of Ord right now. We're funding those opportunities. And of the 7 loans we've made this year, 4 of them are under the age of 30, and all 4 are move backers, as I call them, or choose to be here's. They choose to come back home, and they're starting their businesses, 2 of which are in downtown Ord, one's out in rural Valley County, and one's in North Loop. In addition to that, we do a pretty aggressive business visitation program, BRNEs, and then we also have a business coach on staff here that does that follow-up on the technical assistance side of BREs that helps us keep the conversation going with our business community to say, hey, what pain points do you have? What needs do you have? What opportunities for growth do you have? How can we help you meet there? And through that program, we started engaging in a conversation with a popcorn distribution company about going on 4 years ago. That led to a $7 million expansion project that we're able to use tax increment financing for in North Loop, and then also grab building site development funds with the help of Kelly Jewicki at DED in the amount of $100,000 for site prep for that project. And that's preserving about 15, 20 jobs in North Loop that most likely would probably phase out slowly and decline and decay over time based off of their need for modernization because they ship globally to about 28 different countries around the world, and they have to meet new food processing standards to be able to get into certain countries. And this year's obviously been a bit of a challenge for them, but they are growing and they're getting closer to completion on that project. We also work with another agribusiness in North Loop, which produces sunflower oil. They distribute around the country and around the state. And we've been able to help them secure financial resources to help in their business growth operations. Rick is real familiar with those guys from MPPD. And then in Arcadia, we've done a lot of small business finance there over the last several years. And we've even done some business transition work in Elyria, which is a town of 50 people, but it's got 3 really nice businesses up there that generate good retail pull. We work with them. We were able to find a buyer for a business up there that transitioned 2 years ago. And it's always fun to see youthful energy inject into an existing business that baby boom age generation wanted to sell because they were retiring. And it was a viable business with a very good book of business. So we just needed to find somebody that had a passion for it and run it. And we were able to finance that through LB 840 as well. So we've been really active. We're starting to do outreach with the nonprofit VCD incorporated to the other villages. My bet is that Elyria is probably going to be the one to bite first and bringing us up to help them with some abandoned property mitigation there because Arcadia has been on a tear on their own. They do a really good job in Arcadia without much support from us outside of small business finance. And in North Loop, they've been doing nuisance abatement there on dangerous properties, the same as that we've been doing here in Ord as well.
So it kind of goes back to activity breeds activity. The success in Ord has kind of made it possible for you to, as part of your job description, to assist the smaller communities, but they're catching the excitement and addressing their own issues as well. So great. Super. So what questions do you have for Caleb? Well, as people are thinking about that, I will mention that, and I shared this with Caleb in our practice session, the work that he's doing, as well as many other countless volunteers, are kind of catching the waves of the, you were featured on 1011 Now. They did a feature article on you, as well as the Brookings Institute did an entire podcast on what's happening in Ord. So very exciting to have the spotlight being shined on rural Nebraska. So
Thank you.
yeah. So what questions are coming to mind? Okay, I see something has popped in here. What is the organizational type of your investment club? Is it a for-profit or not-for-profit?
For profit, and it is organized as an LLC. Both of them are.
Okay. Good. Thank you. Thank you, Patrick, for that question. So, okay.
To
Any
answer
other
David Branch's
questions?
question, yes, I was a feral child that was rarely home, and I rode the streets of Nahaka and Kearney, Nebraska extensively. So, yes, my dad was a farmer, and so I I grew up on the farm and I grew up on the streets in a joking manner. But yeah, we did roam.
Okay. Great. So, well, as you're thinking about today's presentation and maybe a question is still forming in your mind, let me just have Sherry advance us to the next slide. And I'm going to show her, have her show our HomeNE website where you can find Caleb's presentation, probably tomorrow or Monday, as well as past webinars. She's going to show you how to maybe search. Investment Club was a topic of our Q&A time. So Sherry, do you want to share that briefly? And if you want to say something as you're searching, that would be great.
So on our HomeNE website, you can go to webinars recordings, scroll down, and there's a search, and we'll type in investment clubs and search that. And we pull up, there's actually 4. I must need to try investment club. There we go. We have 4. Bertrand has an investment club. Ansley has spoke twice about our investment clubs. We also have an educational investment club webinar that dates back all the way to August of 2018 with Cliff Mesner talking about investment clubs and how to get one started. So you can search on this website, tiny homes, micro TIF. After every webinar as an office, we gather up all the different topics that were touched on. Everybody sends them to me in an email, and we try to tag every single one of them so that if you're searching for something, you can find it.
Thanks, Sherry. So, okay. I'm not seeing any other questions for you, Caleb, but he did put in the chat box a link to their program guidelines and applications there. So that's the great thing about HomeNE, people sharing resources. So that's great. So, okay, next month, our webinar will be on November the 20th. And at this time, please be watching for and waiting for the announcement of our speakers. Our confirmed speaker unfortunately has to have some surgery in November and didn't feel like she could commit. So we have her scheduled for early next year, but we'll be lining up somebody shortly and we'll be letting you know as we get closer to that November 20th date. And as you always hear me say, if you know a good story or a lesson learned story in your area of the state, please let us know. We'll be happy to check it out and talk to the speaker that you mentioned and do the diligence on that. So, Caleb, any last thoughts that you want to share with us?
I kind of glazed over the nuisance abatement piece real quick. First and foremost, Sharon Heffley is one of the foremost, and Lori and Sherry on nuisance abatement. If you have questions there, we didn't add any new laws or rules. We didn't do the vacant property registration. What we did is just enforce existing ordinance, and that takes a lot of backbone for a city council to do that. And I cannot thank my city council enough for stepping up and doing something about a number of substandard human living condition issues throughout our community. We have got to be better in how we treat our residents, and they agreed, and that has been tremendous for us.
Yeah, it's one of the hardest programs to administer, but it's so key and foundational to the success of future activity in your community. So thank you again, Caleb. I greatly appreciate your time and you joining us today, and we look forward to having you again in the future. Okay. And for everybody else, thanks for joining us, and we'll be happy to see you here again next month. So have a great rest of your day.